Hey guys, back again. So this is a big video I'm going to do on rewatching and re-ranking the entire Halloween franchise before Halloween Kills, which comes out next week as of this recording. And I'm incredibly excited because Halloween is a franchise I have watched since I was, I think, 11 or 12. I'm 28 now, so I've had 16 years worth of watching Halloween movies. And funny enough, the first one I watched was Halloween 2. But basically, what I'm going to do is just talk about every Halloween movie, all of them, and then I'm going to do a ranking at the end. But I'm going to talk in depth about each one because I really think that the Halloween franchise is such an interesting franchise, and I really enjoy it and love it. And I watch them every year, no matter what. I usually almost watch the Halloween movies almost every year. So let's get started. I've got the nice box set, and I've got all the movies to show off while I talk about it. So let's talk about them in order first before the ranking. Let's talk about the original Halloween, which really, what can I say about the original? Directed by John Carpenter, a madman breaks loose and starts killing people off, killing babysitters off. Pretty much the plot of this, while his doctor is chasing him, Dr. Loomis. So it's a very, very simple plot. It's directed by John Carpenter, who is very interesting in his own right already in terms of what he's already made, because this had a lot of influence from Assault on Precinct 13. It felt like that movie in a lot of ways. Low budget, and also the use of like the creepy camera of the characters kind of in the background, kind of like Michael Myers is in this movie. I also love the poster art as well, and I love how these as well. The Scream Factory box set has the artwork. This is such simple artwork, and I really love what 70s, and 80s artwork did. This was, of course, from 1978, but you know what I mean. Love the poster art, love the score. John Carpenter's score, I think, is probably the best horror score ever for Halloween. I've always felt like it's the creepiest and most effective, and it's so simplistic. And I love that John Carpenter did that in this movie. It's such a simplistic movie in every way, but it's executed so well in regards to all the other movies we get after this, like in terms of slashers, in terms of thrillers like this. Um, and this one has a pretty small cast too. It's got three girls. Jamie Lee Curtis's character Laurie. Well, you've got Annie and Linda, who T.J. Souls and Nancy Keys play, and you've got Dr. Loomis, Donald Pleasance, and Michael Myers, who is played by a million people in this movie. There's like 5 or 6 people that played Michael Myers, but the most known is the one with the face off is Tony Moran. But then you get why am I blanking on his name? I always know his name, and I'm immediately blanking on Nick Castle. I don't know why. I, of course, screwed up whenever I've already known this before, but Nick Castle is the most known. Tony Moran is the face whenever the mask comes off, and Deborah Hill as well, who's the writer of this movie with John Carpenter. She also played Michael Myers for a scene at the beginning, the opening scene, and from the point of view of Michael as a 6-year-old killing his sister. The point of view of her grabbing the knife is Deborah Hill, which is pretty cool, just because she was small, so it kind of fit the stature of a kid. Um, the atmosphere in this is fantastic. It's one of the best, honestly, in terms of watching a solid horror movie. It is the best in terms of atmosphere. Um, Michael Myers in this, I'm going to talk about Michael Myers in each one, but Michael Myers in this one is the scariest because of how mysterious they make Michael Myers, in terms of, not in terms of his backstory, but in terms of you barely see him, and then whenever you do, it's really works because the buildup is great. And this is definitely the biggest slow burn out of all of them, and that makes it the best one. It's the best made out of all of the Halloween movies. Of course it is. Like, you didn't expect me to say any other ones were way better made, but this one is obviously the best made. Oh, and also, side note, I've got the Halloween shirt as well. I bought this from Walmart pretty recently. So I just looked down and I'm like, oh yeah, I've got the shirt as well. Perfect timing. So like I said, Halloween, originally titled The Babysitter Murders. Irving Yablans, who did he was a producer on a lot of older movies, came in, wanted to do The Babysitter Murders, then brought John Carpenter in after Assault on Precinct 13, and then he called it Halloween. Almost made it a sequel to Black Christmas in a way. where it would have been the killer from that, which is really cool. I love that little tidbit because Black Christmas is fantastic as well, the original from 1974. This movie is so influential. It is the slasher that made slashers, really. I mean, I know of course, we had Psycho, which isn't technically a slasher. Two people get killed, but you had Psycho, you had Peeping Tom, you had Black Christmas, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and those two, Black Christmas and Texas Chainsaw in particular, are very influential in terms of how they are like this movie, but this one was the one that created the genre, really. Even though we had those before Halloween came out, and they're both fantastic as well. Some of my absolute favorites, those two movies, but this one is the one that sparked the ignition. Like, this is the one that created the slasher genre, because after this, every studio in town wanted to make a slasher. And it's so weird because Friday the 13th in 1980 was released, and they were directly ripping off Halloween, but it was more bloodier than this. While this movie doesn't show much violence at all, which I like, I think that's cool. It leaves up to the imagination, but whenever Friday the 13th, the original, came out in 1980, they were ripping off Halloween directly, and they made a slew of slashers that were gory and bloody, which I enjoy as well. I enjoy fun, ridiculous slashers, but this one is so different than those. The first one in particular. And it's weird to see that all the sequels go that route of a slasher almost, in terms of more gore and more blood, as opposed to this one where there's really not much blood. There is violence, and it's really off screen for the most part, which again is really effective. That's what makes it so scary. I love the opening POV. That's one of the scariest things I've ever seen. Like, I don't get scared at movies. If I'm being honest, I don't get scared watching movies, but I feel like this is creepy and effective. The opening scene, a point of view of Michael going in, killing his sister upstairs, going downstairs, the parents come home, take off the mask, and it's just a little kid. And you're like, this is really, really odd and really creepy, but it works. And then the rest of the story is Michael is getting moved, getting transferred, and by his doctor, Dr. Loomis, and the nurse, Marion. And they both see him escape. He goes back to Haddonfield to kill. He goes and finds the 3 babysitters, and he starts stalking them. And that's pretty much the movie. And pretty much it's just pretty much that's the basic movie, which is very simplistic. But like I said, it's just so elaborated so well in just being a simplistic movie, but it's so incredibly effective. And John Carpenter, I feel like, while he has had some movies that I don't love, he is a director that I've always appreciated no matter what, even if I don't like some of his movies. It's pretty small amount. Like, most of his movies are good or great, but this is definitely my favorite out of all of them. And I know people say The Thing, and I love The Thing, it's great, but it's not one that I rewatch much. I think it's really just, it's a fantastically made movie, but it's not one that I care to rewatch. So pretty much is that story, and then at the end of the movie, Michael escapes. And it sets up the idea that he's still out there. And Michael is a shape. He is a spirit. He is called the Shape. He is something that is not... In this first movie, it's like he's not human. He is human, but he's not human, because he can glide, slowly appear, and just reappear in different places and disappear, like a spirit. But then in the new movie, 2018, they say he's like a human being, which this movie didn't really feel like that. It really felt like he was a genuine, like, spirit. Like, he never felt like he was of this earth, like he was a real thing, which genuinely surprised me that the 2018 movie does that. Doing no edits here. So you also have Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie, her first role in a movie. I think she was in like a TV show at first. I forgot which show it was. I don't know if it was Magnum PI or something, but she also went on to do The Love Boat with her mom as well. But she wasn't doing much. She was, I don't know if she didn't really want to be an actor. Apparently she wanted to be a policewoman. But but apparently she got this role because of being the daughter of Janet Leigh, who was in Psycho. And that's awesome casting to put her in this. And of course, it created this career for her. And I love how Jamie Lee Curtis, no matter if she likes horror or not, because she is not a fan of scary stuff. I love the fact that she, unlike a lot of actors who start out in horror and then get out of it and are really ungrateful, like she is very grateful for this opportunity to have her whole life and her whole career because of this movie. This movie created her. And there are other people that are actors in the world that don't want to acknowledge that they were in horror movies, like for example, like Julia Louis-Dreyfus in Troll, or Jennifer Aniston in Leprechaun. Like they don't want to point out that they were in these schlocky movies. But Jamie Lee Curtis, I love the fact that she's not even a fan of the genre in that way. Like she supports it, but she's scared of all this stuff. She doesn't like horror movies, and I've heard in interviews she doesn't like horror. She doesn't like scary stuff. So the fact that she supports it is so incredible, because it's just the fact that you've got so many actors who don't do that. And Laurie, her performance as Laurie is such a likable presence. Like she is such a likable girl. She is this character who is a loner, 17-year-old loner, who has friends who are horny and out there having sex while she's just being herself and just being not very promiscuous or anything. She just goes on her day while her friends go and are horny and just want to have sex, which it's funny just to see, because John Carpenter denies this, and I kind of agree with them, where they with this movie and the analysis of it, they made it look like he made the archetype of like the virgin is the one that survives and the horny ones get in trouble because they were doing bad stuff. And I think John Carpenter said that whenever these characters who are the ones having sex, it's just because they're not paying attention as opposed to not being smart. He didn't really create that cliche, or try to, but people have really really brought that into it and thought that he did. So it's very strange that they look at it that way, that like the character that doesn't have sex survives. And it created a whole plethora of like final girls who do that. And there's some that have sex, but then there's some that don't and survive. And whether or not he whether he created this or not, it still was created almost unintentionally through this movie. So it's very interesting to see that. It just surprised me that, like, thinking of that, like, he really didn't put that in place, but he technically did. So I love how she's got her friends as well. Annie, Nancy Keys, who's a smart aleck. She's really funny. I love her, just how sarcastic she is. Like whenever Laurie and her are walking down the street and then Michael's behind the bushes, Annie doesn't see, she's looking at her purse. And then Laurie says, look, there's the person from earlier. And then Annie said, oh, subtle, isn't he? And like she goes up and goes, hey, creep. And then she looks behind the bush. Michael's, of course, not there. But I thought that was really funny. And I liked that performance as well from Annie. Linda PJ Souls is the one who says totally a lot, and she's just memorable for that. And PJ Souls is awesome. After she was in Carrie, she was brought into this, which Carrie's one of my favorite horror movies, but she was brought into this because of that. She's great in this as well. And as I keep coughing, you've got the three main girls who are great. You've got Bob, he's there, he gets killed. He's not anything super special. You got Dr. Loomis, who the late Donald Pleasance played, who is great. He's the one who, I'm trying to think with the new Halloween movies, if Jamie Lee Curtis has been in these movies more or Donald Pleasance has. I think Donald Pleasance had been in 5 movies. Halloween 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. And Jamie Lee Curtis has been in 1, 2, H2O, Resurrection, 2018. Okay, and then Kills, and then I'm guessing In. So she has been in it more. But Donald Pleasance had held the record for the longest time for being in a majority of these Halloween movies. Up until his death in 1995, he was in every Michael Myers Halloween movie besides 3, because of course Halloween 3 has nothing to do with Michael Myers. He is great. He's fantastic in this. He just elevates the role. I don't know much else about Donald Pleasance in terms of his acting other projects he did. I know he was in Prince of Darkness, which I have seen and I enjoy, but that's another John Carpenter one. But I haven't seen that many Donald Pleasance movies. Oh, I guess I've seen the James Bond one. Um, I think it's You Only Live Twice. I think that's the one he's in. Blofeld, I think is his name. But I haven't seen that much with him in it. But he is great in this movie, and he's great in all the sequels. Um, he's the doctor who tries to tell everybody, like, Michael's escaped. We got to go get Michael. He's a danger, and I like too the side characters. They're all memorable as well. Chief Brackett, who says the line, "You know, everyone's entitled to one get scared." I think that's memorable. Chuck Cyphers or Charles Cyphers. You got Tommy and Lindsay, these two little kids who, they're kid actors and they have kid performances in this. Like, they're not incredibly memorable, but they've got some funny lines. Like, I do like how Tommy tries to scare Lindsay. I do like how Lindsay gets flustered and annoyed whenever she's trying to watch TV and then she just gets interrupted. I think that's funny. It's cool to see Kyle Richards coming out in the next Halloween movie, to appear in the next Halloween movie in Halloween Kills. That's awesome. But I enjoy the kid actors. They're fine. They're totally solid enough. I love how the movie has no on-screen violence, really, and that's the exact opposite of all the sequels, even the new one, which kind of mix both. But that's great. Incredible cinematography by Dean Cundey. First three movies, incredible cinematography. Dean Cundey, I think, did all three of the first ones. I know he did 1 and 2. I think he did 3 as well. But I love the cinematography from Dean Cundey. It's fantastic. The movie just breathes atmosphere, even though it's, of course, filmed in the summer. It wasn't filmed on Halloween or in the fall. They had to rake up fake leaves, put them up, put them down, pick them up again. So the fact that they had this low shoestring budget, $300,000, and then created all this illusion to make it feel like it was fall, they did a really good job of that, even though you can kind of tell it's in California with some shots, but it still is fantastic, though, in that way. This one also is just before Halloween 2. This one is just Michael is a crazy guy trying to get whoever he finds, and he sets his sights on Laurie, as opposed to the second one where it says they're brother and sister. And then all the other sequels say that, and then 2018 ignores that. So it's very weird to see in this first one. I do like both ideas that he could be brother and sister, like they can be brother and sister. But I also like the idea that he's just crazy and he's getting people. And that makes it even scarier when it's a random killer. So I really enjoyed that as well. And I enjoyed that even though the brother and sister connection is not apparent here, you can look at it either way. Because even though John Carpenter didn't like that he wrote that into 2 and he put it into 2, it still feels like it could really be true in the first one, even though they don't say it. So I like that as well. And no sequel ever felt the same after John Carpenter directed, only this one. The new one, 2018, feels the most like the original in terms of how it's filmed, but it still feels not like John Carpenter. It feels the closest, but almost the closest. Also Halloween 2, 1981, because basically John Carpenter and Rick Rosenthal were doing it together. But they never felt completely like John Carpenter after the first one. They had little bits of it, like I said, Halloween 2, 1981, and the new one, but it never felt complete. It felt aesthetically similar, a couple of them, but not completely. And also, I want to point out the extended cut as well, which has a couple scenes added into it for the TV version, which were made whenever Halloween 2 came out, so they did elaborate on the sister thing, where Michael, whenever he escaped, he rode sister in the sanitarium. Then there's a scene of Laurie and the girls like seeing Michael again for another time while Laurie's getting her hair dried. And and then you've got the scene of young Loomis and young Michael, and I really like that scene. I wish that was in the movie, where like the whole movie, but it's a scene where it's young Michael Myers and then young Loomis, and Loomis says, "You fooled everybody, but you haven't fooled me." And it's just a really good scene. Too good to be just a TV cut scene. But I really love that scene. And I love the movie as well. Like I said, it's one of the best horror movies ever. Like, it's truly fantastic. I love Halloween. Um, I really, I really don't know what else to say about it because it is so talked about to death. But like I said, it had a lot of imitators as well. It created a whole slasher genre, giant plethora of slashers throughout the decade of 1980. And still to this day, like, you still feel Halloween's influence. But like I said, Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Black Christmas and Psycho, I feel like, are the most influential of that time, of the 60s to the 70s. But yeah, love the original. The original is fantastic. As well as Halloween 2, which is the first one I watched. Like, whenever I first started watching these movies, I saw this was on TV. And I just watched it, and I'm like, I'm not scared of this. I actually can watch it. Because I was scared of horror movies whenever I was a kid. And Halloween 2 is the reason why I love horror movies. It is. I think you can't say it's the better movie of the two because it's definitely got some issues with it, but it is the most watchable one for me. I love Halloween 2, like I said, because I grew up watching it. Um, I think it is creepy and effective. This time it's directed by Rick Rosenthal. I feel like John Carpenter directed a lot of this movie too. Um, the poster art is fantastic of the pumpkin with a skull. That's so cool. The cast is way more of a slasher than the first movie, where this one has Laurie and Loomis. Laurie is basically asleep most of the movie, and then Loomis is there trying to find where Michael is. And then you've got a lot of cannon fodder, people just there to get killed, like in a slasher, which, don't get me wrong, it's entertaining as hell in this movie, but it's a low set of characters. And Chief Brackett's in it, but then he like leaves the movie after like 20 minutes and you don't see him ever again because he runs away because his daughter Annie was killed in the first movie. And he hears about it, so he runs away, and then you don't see him again. And we're like, what? Okay. That's kind of weird. Score is fantastic as well. John Carpenter came back, and Alan Howarth also did the music, I think, as well, who would keep going on to do the music throughout a lot of the films, like until 6, I think, up until part 6. But the cast is pretty small. The atmosphere in this, while not like the original, is still really effective. The dark hallways in this hospital, the use of Michael Myers' point of view, the use of Michael Myers just walking around with Dick Warlock, who played Michael Myers in this, is really creepy. His performance is really fantastic, and I love the performance of him as well, Dick Warlock. His head is a little bigger than the other people in the first movie, so the mask is a little wider, but that makes it creepier, I think, honestly, in how it looks. And Halloween 2 is a direct sequel. It literally happens the second after the first one ends. Michael Myers is missing. Laurie's taken to the hospital. Then Michael chases her while picking off a lot of people at the hospital. And by the end, Laurie is chased again, and Loomis comes and saves her again. And then Michael Myers is burned to death, and Loomis is burned to death in an explosion. And I love that. I love this movie. Like I said, it has some issues, but I love it. This one, like I said, is way more gorier. It shows way more gore than you would have expected if you watched the first movie. But this was created after the 80s slasher started, after Friday the 13th happened. John Carpenter, of all people, who it's weird because he made a movie where there's not much blood. This movie, he's the one who put in all the blood, all the gore in this movie to make it, quote unquote, more like the slasher movies of that time, which is very strange because I didn't expect him, of all people, to do that. But John Carpenter was against the idea of a sequel anyway, so it's very weird. Michael is basically the main character in this because it is, again, a serial killer picking off people. And as opposed to the first movie where Michael was a background, like he was there hidden, this one he is front and center, still hiding, but front and center like being a slasher villain, which is fine. I love slashers, and this is one of my absolute favorite slashers ever. But it's just the distinction between the first one and the second one. All the side characters are pretty memorable. Bud especially is memorable. I like all these characters. I think that they all are kooky 80s slasher characters, and they all work. I love how this has so many quotable lines to it. I love whenever Dr. Loomis sees Michael's body's missing and the neighbor says, "I've been trick-or-treated to death tonight." And then Loomis says, "You don't know what death is." And then the music starts and it's great. But I love quotes like that. I love how much of an asshole Bud is, where he says like, "Amazing grace, come sit on my face." Like, or it's like, "Julie's full of shit," like that. Um, and I like those, all these different sets of dialogue. Like the lines are very quotable in this. It feels very much like an 80s slasher, in all different ways. Um, Again, it looks mostly like the first one because of Dean Cundy's cinematography, because of Rick Rosenthal and John Carpenter's directing, because they both directed this. I think there were too many cooks in the kitchen, and this is not going to be a thing that is going to go away with the rest of the franchise. There's some other movies where it's going to be apparent that there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen again. Um, the whole last act is fantastic. I love. I think it is genuinely one of the scariest shots in the whole franchise, where Laurie's running down the stairs in the hospital, and then it's just Michael slowly walking down the stairs, just blank face. I think that is perfect. Um, Him chasing her around in the hospital is great. It's really effective, really cool, and I love how she goes outside. Then Loomis and Marion walk in, and then right after that she screams, and Michael chases her. Then she goes in, and then Loomis shoots him again and again. But then they eventually just have to have Loomis and Michael sacrifice themselves together to get Michael gone. Like, Loomis has to sacrifice himself by killing Michael. Great. I love, as well, there's a death scene in a hot tub, which Pamela Susan Shoop, if you were a young boy and watched this, you know who I'm talking about. She's killed in the bathtub, like she gets drowned in the bathtub, Michael drowns her, and they do that in the movie Deep Red, and it's basically the same scene, like literally the exact same scene, and it's just funny. I don't know if they've watched that movie before this, because that came out in 75, but it's almost exactly the same kill scene. But like I said, the gore is good, even though it's just such a difference from the first one. I love the opening pumpkin. Like the first movie where you got the opening pumpkin with the music, this time the skull breaks open, or the pumpkin breaks open, and it's a skull inside, and it's really, really cool. I love that pan in of the skull. It's got some weird stuff in it. Like I said, Laurie's asleep in the most of the movie. It's not as much character driven, or I mean, the first one isn't super character driven, but it feels like more focused. Also, Ben Tramer from the first movie apparently dies by explosion by a cop car hitting another car, and it blows him up, and they think it's Michael Myers. And it's kind of a plot that like doesn't really go much anywhere, like, except for the fact that it delays the fact that Loomis knows that Michael's out there still. And then there's the reveal in this movie that John Carpenter wrote but then hated, that Laurie and Michael are brother and sister, and Laurie was taken away from the family and then had her name changed, and it seems far-fetched, but I also like that. And I'm going to point out later in other films, specifically the 2018 one, where it's like, the brother-sister angle, you might not like John Carpenter, but then I feel like it makes more logical sense than like what they did in 2018 with like trying to get him back to Laurie, and why Michael would care to get back to Laurie. It's very weird. But that twist I never hated. It wasn't a twist I disliked. I honestly feel like it makes H2O stronger in terms of like why Michael is there as opposed to 2018. But I always love watching this. I also always think, I watched Night of the Living Dead for the first time, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years ago. But I always think of this movie because always seeing Night of the Living Dead on TV, like, because it was free domain, and it still is, I think, free domain. It's just so funny to see that. I always think of Halloween 2 first. Whenever I watch Night of the Living Dead, I'm like, oh, this is what they were watching on TV, the old couple. It's one of my absolute favorites ever. I love Halloween 2. It's one of my favorite slashers. It has some issues with it. Or, I mean, it has issues, but it's not ever ones that really make me mad or anything. I think it's fantastic despite that. And also there's a TV cut, which is very interesting. There's a lot. It's more like the original movie where there's not much gore. The gore's cut out. You get a different ending with Laurie crying with Jimmy at the end, saying "We made it," which I liked, as opposed to the theatrical ending, which I like, where Laurie is just sitting there in the ambulance, like thinking about Michael. But I do like that she had somebody survive with her throughout the night. If you saw the TV cut where Jimmy was with her and survived, like you think, oh, she at least got some kind of happiness as opposed to just being alone in the ambulance at the end of the theatrical cut. Um, but it is a very weird TV cut. Like I'm not going to explain all the differences, but I just wanted to point out there is a TV cut. So yeah, Halloween 2. Love it, love it, love it. And then we have Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, which has one of the coolest poster artworks ever. I love that. It's fantastic, that poster artwork. Directed by Tommy Lee Wallace, who is in the first Halloween. He played Michael Myers, and then he also just did a lot of stuff behind the scenes. It has a fantastic score from John Carpenter and Alan Howarth. The atmosphere in this, like the first two, is fantastic because it really bleeds Halloween. This feels more like a Halloween movie than the first two Halloween movies. And that's not saying it as an insult to the other two Halloween movies, but this one is about the holiday. Like the first two Halloween movies, Michael Myers escapes on Halloween, but it's not like he couldn't have escaped in any other time of the year or killed his sister on any time of the year. It was just on Halloween, ironically enough. But this one, it has to be set on Halloween because it's about a crazy wizard, a crazy wizard who is creating these masks that will kill every child on Earth. Like with these masks, it'll make bugs and snakes come out of their heads. It sounds so weird describing that, but it's really effective and really cool. But it's got great atmosphere in it. The villain, I think, is great. Colonel Cochran, Dan O'Hurley, is really good, and he's always a soft-spoken character, and he never says anything like loud. I also like how most of the crew is back in this one, despite not being. This movie is not connected to the first or second movie because the first movie is shown as a commercial in this movie, so it exists in the universe as a movie. You've got a cameo by, I think, Jamie Lee Curtis, I think, did the voice of the announcer in the town. But I don't know if that's ever been completely true. Like, I don't know if she's ever said if that's true or not. But you also got Nancy Keys, who was in all three of the first Halloween movies, this time as Dan Chalice's ex-wife. And I like how it is not a slasher. It is a thriller. Like, it is Invasion of the Body Snatchers B-movie type of movie. And it just bleeds atmosphere. And I love the fact that it does. And I really think that this one got so much. This movie, whenever it was released in 1982, I just read online, I heard that it bombed. Bad word of mouth spread. It was not about Michael Myers. People were pissed. This was going to be originally going to be a start of an anthology series based on things around Halloween, which would have been really cool. But I do like some of the sequels, so I'm fine with that. But even though this was a one-off, that's fine. But I really love this movie despite that. Like, it sucks that it had such a bad reputation for years and years and years because it's called Halloween 3. But I still love it despite that. I love how Dan Chalice, this main character, Tom Atkins' character, is literally just a horn dog. Like, he's just there to meet this girl, Ellie Grimbridge. Her dad gets killed in the beginning of the movie by these mysterious men in suits who are the minions of Colonel Cochran. Like, they're like robots. And he gets killed. The dad gets killed. So Ellie Grimbridge goes with Dan Chalice to go and find the mystery of what happened to her dad. Why did he die? And then basically, it's about Dan Chalice wanting to get laid as opposed to really caring about her father. And they have sex a lot of times. And it's funny because he's literally just a horn dog. And I just like that there's a main character like that. Like, it's funny that this character literally just is there to be horny. And, like, you don't... Like, with the first Halloween, it's about Laurie Strode being the one who doesn't have sex. In this movie, it's about the main character who has sex all the time with the pretty girl, and then he survives, I guess. Again, with the ambiguous ending. But the best thing about this is the score, the atmosphere. The performances are really good as well. I I like how it's just such a silly B movie. It's so fun in a good way. Like it just is so atmospheric. Again, Dean Cundey came back. Great cinematography. Having Alan Howarth and John Carpenter again really make this music memorable and just really, really. I always remember the score from this one as well. The bleak ending, the idea that you never really know what happened. Did he actually save the day, or did all the kids on the earth get killed, or at least in the U.S.? I don't know if it was around the world. I think it was just the U.S. Um, what would have happened after this if the cop, if the the federal, like the police and everybody tried to save anybody, or tried to, how, what would have been the story after the masks went off and killed all these kids? That would have been very fascinating to see. But of course it ends on an ambiguous ending, which is fine because it still makes you question today, what happened. And then of course the song Happy Happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock, that's just London Bridge because it was free domain, that Tommy Lee Wallace just used that. And it's a catchy ass theme. You will remember it in your head for days. But I just love Halloween 3. It's a very odd and silly movie, but I enjoy it for how fun it is. It's just so incredibly fun. And it's just such a shame because it was a movie that was lambasted because it was not about Michael Myers, which, to be fair, the title says Halloween 3. I would be pissed too probably if I saw this in theaters in 1982, but I'm glad it has a cult following. I'm glad people are loving it now. I'm glad it's gained the reputation it should, because it's just a fun B movie and it's enjoyable and just really fun. And I like what they do with all the silliness of it and just the creepiness. It's got some effective stuff in it. So I love Halloween 3, but of course Halloween 3 did not do well, so they had to wait 6 years, and then Michael Myers came back for Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. This time directed by Dwight H. Little, the only one he directed in the franchise. The poster art is cool, but it's just Michael Myers from the first one and the house from the first one. Those don't appear. Michael Myers does not have that mask in this movie. The score is good, but it's really just a lot of quiet noises. It's not like the first two where it's a steady sounding music. It's just a lot of ambiance and sound, which is fine. It works in this movie, and there's some quiet moments that work and are effective in the movie to make it creepier. The atmosphere is pretty good. It's definitely a step down from the first three in terms of atmosphere. Michael Myers in this, George P. Wilbur, is scary, but his mask is just kind of goofy looking, as opposed it does not look like this. It looks way different than this. It does not look that good. And it's so weird because the mask will have an issue throughout the rest of this franchise where it's how do you screw up an easy mask like this that was a William Shatner mask spray painted in the first movie? How do you make a mask look so weird in the next sequels? But Halloween 4, after Halloween 3 failed, it was a back to basics. It was basically the first movie again. Basically, because Michael Myers breaks out. He's trying to get a victim. Teenagers are killed. But the main character this time is a little girl who is Jamie Lloyd, who is Laurie Strode's daughter. And in this movie, Laurie Strode had been killed. She is dead. Jamie's mom and dad are dead. So Laurie Strode and whoever the unnamed husband are dead. So she's chased and terrorized by Michael Myers, her uncle. And pretty much that's the story. There's not much to it. And it's also Loomis appears again and is there to try to save the day again, like the first one. And also you got a Sheriff Meeker, as opposed to the last sheriff who, Sheriff Brackett, is retired in this movie, is how they describe it. They say he's retired in 81. So you've basically got the first movie again, but not done as well. It's still done. I actually like this one a lot. I still think this one, with some of its shortcomings, I do like Halloween 4 a lot. The directing, I think, is pretty competently done. I think the writing is good. I think it works. Michael McElroy wrote it. He also wrote the Wrong Turn movies, I believe. I think. Don't quote me on that. I think he wrote the new one, and I think he wrote the first one. So it's cool to see these people involved, because I think they were good like replacements, but they weren't great replacements for John Carpenter and like everybody afterwards. Because like I said, Halloween 2 felt like it was John Carpenter directing and Rick Rosenthal directing, because they both were like arguing about the movie, um but yeah. And also, like I said, the main character is a 7 or 8 year old girl, and it's a rare horror movie where the person who he's trying to kill is a kid, like a 7 year old, the whole movie. And Danielle Harris is great in this movie. She's great in 5 as well, and in the Rob Zombie ones as well. And I love that she got a chance to come back, because she was not in part 6, which I'll get to later. But she's a sweetheart. I met her one time at a convention, and I barely said anything because I was so awkwardly shy, because she was just such a nice person. And I was just like, what do I say to this actor? I never met an actor before, but she was great. Um, but yeah, she in this movie like really really sells it as this little girl who is really going through this horrible mess, a horrible situation. And I really liked, like as a child actor, I think the acting worked really well. And then you got Rachel, who is the older teenager character, like Laurie Strode in the first movie. But I like how Rachel is this self-centered character who they adopted Jamie, her family, but then Rachel is just wanting to get a boyfriend. She wants to get Brady, so she's mean and she's unlikable. Um, but then she learns the error of her ways throughout the movie and becomes like the savior of Jamie, as opposed to the beginning where she's just like, I gotta watch this kid. I can't go out and go see my boyfriend or go get a boyfriend because I gotta babysit. Like, and it's just such a bratty thing to say, but I like how this character grows, and I liked how Rachel evolved throughout the first movie, or throughout this movie, not the first movie, this movie in particular, Halloween 4. Um, I liked all the side characters as well. I liked Kelly, the cops do it by the book girl. She's really funny. I like when she says "fuck off, Wade" to the guy who's trying to hit on her in the pharmacy shop, or drug pharmacy shop. Sheriff Meeker I liked. I thought he was a good replacement for the sheriff. Um, Loomis is great, like the last two he was in. I like how he's even crazier because he's seen this happen twice already. Um, and it's weird because, again, Halloween 2 was kind of like, they made Halloween 3 because Halloween 2 is the end of Michael and Loomis. But then they brought him back and said like a silly line like, oh, they survived the explosion. And then you see Loomis has some like makeup, or Donald Pleasance has some makeup where it's like a big like burnt wart on his face. And it's just like, it's so silly that he survived that and Michael survived that. But it's even more silly in 5 when you see Michael's face and he's not burned, period. So they at least attempted to make Loomis look like he was burn victim, but he was not really that much of a burn victim. Halloween 4 is violent like Halloween 2, but it feels like it's still trying to be like the first one. There's a couple moments of like violence that are added in, like that were effective. Like this guy gets his neck like ripped open or face ripped open, which was really good effective wise, but it's that and another scene are pretty much all the scenes of violence. The other scene is where the guy gets Michael's thumb through his head. All the other scenes are pretty much off camera, like the original movie was. Which this one and 2018 do the same thing. 2018 Halloween, where like they show some violence and then they show some off-screen violence, which is kind of like appeasing to the people who like the violence and the people who don't. So, yeah, like it's violent like Halloween 2. Michael is brutal in this movie. I think he's great, and George P. Wilbur will do this in part 6 as well because he plays Michael in that as well. The atmosphere is pretty good. Like I said, it's not as good as the original or even 2 or 3. The opening is cool where it's just like quiet and like you just see like fall items like out in the outside. Like it's pretty cool. It is thrilling for the most part. The twist at the end is good where Rachel touches Michael's hand and then she becomes possessed by Michael, I guess, and then she stabs her stepmother and then walks up to them with the bloody scissors, and then it ends, and you're like, holy shit, that is a way to end the movie. But then, of course, like most Halloween sequels, after a good one, you get one that completely just shits on the last one. And of course, Jamie was not going to be the killer in the next movie. Of course not. But yeah, speaking of that, I don't like that they. I mean, I like the ending of 4, but then I'm like, no, it's just bullshit, because Halloween 5, the revenge of Michael Myers. This one is very, very weird. Because, like, I'm gonna say real quick, is that it negates the fact that Jamie was the killer at the end of the 4. Like, it's like, oh no, she just did one thing because Michael possessed her, and then that was it. Because Michael would never died. Apparently, according to 5, he didn't die in that little thing he fell into, or whenever he got shot like 60 times at the end of 4, which is ridiculous. This one is directed by Dominique Gerard. I don't know how to pronounce that completely right. But he directed Omen 4, The Awakening as well. Another classic, a movie that people always talk about. The plot of this is that Jamie is now mute because of what happened at the end of 4. And Rachel is immediately killed off, so Michael goes after Tina, Rachel's friend, who we didn't see in the last movie, but we now see in this movie. He goes after her friends while Jamie develops a connection with Michael. And that's pretty much the plot. The poster art is cool. I do like that. I think that's cool with the knife and with Jamie with the clown costume. But again, like 4's artwork, this one doesn't work with the... Because, again, she didn't wear the clown outfit in this movie. So, and that's not Michael's mask, like in this movie. Like, it doesn't look that good. Like 4. People are saying recently now that the Part 5 mask looks like Nicolas Cage. And I can kind of see that, which is really strange. But, yeah, very odd. The cast in this is a weaker cast. Of course, Daniel Harris is great. Dr. Loomis is great. Donald Pleasance. I like Tina, Wendy Kaplan. I know people shit on her, but I like her. All the side characters after that are okay, but they're just kind of forgettable. Like, they're not, especially compared to the other ones. 4 kind of had that problem as well, where it's just a little more forgettable with side characters. Michael in this one is really effective as well, and I do like the fact that this is a different kind of Michael Myers in this one. Like, he uses a lot of different weapons that I didn't expect. He uses way more than a knife in this, but to be fair, in the other movies, in Halloween 2, he used a scalpel a lot too, or like a needle. So, like, I guess it's not the same. I guess it's not that much of a difference between them both. But I thought that the portrayal of Michael was good in this, and I enjoyed that. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name, but dude is good in the movie as Michael. Of course, I looked on the back, and of course they don't say Michael's the actor who plays Michael in this. They don't really in any movie, but blanking on his name. Sorry, guy who played Michael. He was good though. I did like him in the movie, but I'm just having a mind fart. I guess I can't remember his name. I think that this movie does and will do what Halloween H2O to Halloween Resurrection does, where you have a good ending, then it shits on the good ending, then it kills off a main character in this one. So, like I said, the beginning of the movie, Jamie's not the killer, and also Rachel is killed 20 minutes and she actually stupid as compared to the first, and compared to Part 4. She's way more stupid as a character, and it's kind of weird because Ellie Cornell was great in 4, and she's fine in this one, but the way they wrote her, it's just like they made her more dumb. Like, her character, like, they made her character less smart just to kill her off. And I'm like, that just... I don't know, like... But I do like Tina. I don't mind that character, so it just sucks that Rachel had to go in a stupid way. Kind of like they did with Jamie Lee Curtis in Resurrection. It's like, Laurie Strode doesn't go down that way. It just kind of was weak, really weak. I like... the scene before Rachel is killed though with Loomis. I do like that they had a good conversation about how she's just a child. Like, why are people thinking that she's him? She's not him. And I love how Loomis just says, like, they know that she's related to her. They know that she's got his blood. And, like, I just like that scene. And I like how Rachel does say, like, I feel guilty for leaving because she's going to go on a trip, but then she gets killed. But I do like that scene. So I do like that they added a little character to Rachel before they killed her off. even though she did kind of die in a dumb way, like just going around the house, like looking around stupid. Like it's weird because she was way more like with what happened in 4, she wouldn't have been that stupid, I don't think. Like her character. Um, Tina I like as well because she is the party girl and then she becomes the de facto hero. And even though she dies towards the end, I still liked her. I thought she was funny and charming, and I thought that like even though it should have been Rachel that was throughout the whole movie, it would have been more believable because they had the connection, her and Jamie. But I do like that Jamie Tina connection, even though it comes out of nowhere. Because you don't see them, and so you don't see Tina in part 4. So you're like, how did they know each other? How does Rachel friends with her? How is Jamie friends with her? They don't really show that. They just kind of created it in this movie. Like I said, it's weird that Danielle Harris, or it's weird that Jamie is mute, but Danielle Harris does a great job of it. I guess it's mute to say that she's kind of like inherited Michael Myers, like being silent, but also she talks halfway through the movie, so it's like, what's the point of that? Um, Jamie running through the woods is really good, and through the building is good. Those two scenes are really good, and the laundry shoot scene is really good, where Michael's stabbing through the laundry chute trying to get her. Originally, you see her get stabbed in the leg, but they wanted to cut that because it's a 8-year-old girl, a 9-year-old girl getting stabbed in the leg. But you do see the aftermath. You see her get out, and she's got a bloodied up leg, which is pretty surprising. Like I just didn't expect that they would. Like even rewatching it, I just always forget that. And I like the barn scene. I think that there are scenes in this movie that work in terms of creepiness. Like I think the movie is creepy and atmospheric in some ways. Some ways better than 4, but 4 I think is a better movie. This one was made a year after the 4th one, and it was in rush quick production. And you can tell, it really feels like a movie that's not really completed as much. And there's a lot of weird stuff. There's some weird ADR. There's a scene where Tina's in the car with Michael. There's a guy named Michael that she's dating. Then Michael Myers kills her, and then it's Michael Myers in the car wearing a mask. And then she says, "That's what I get, Mike. Nothing." And then like whenever she says that, you can obviously tell in her mouth she doesn't say that. It's like she says, "That's what I get, nothing." Like she literally, her mouth does not match that word, and it's just weird ADR. And like the movie just feels so rushed. It feels like there's a lot of silly shit in it. Like there's these cops who, whenever they come up, they make quacking noises. Like not the cops, but the soundtrack. And you're like, what the hell is this? Like, why does that need to be in this movie? That makes no sense. That's so stupid. And also, the Michael Myers house was a suburban house, and now it's like a gothic castle, and it's the only time in the franchise that it's like that. Every other movie knew, even the next sequel connected to this one, part 6, knew that it was a normal looking house. That's so weird. And it's the most rushed film. It's one of the weirdest films besides part 6. And even Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. But it's one of the weirdest ones. It's very rushed. It's got some good moments of creepiness to it and effectiveness. But it has a lot of stupid stuff in it. It's definitely one of the weakest for me. And then I heard the new Scream Factory 4K release of Halloween 5 is coming out, and it's got footage of Dr. Death, which is the guy who was the hermit in the beginning of the movie, and it's a new footage that you never seen before. So I'm gonna get that 4K soon. Or I'm going to try to get the 4Ks of 1 through 5 because they announced those and they were just released today or a couple days ago. So I'm excited to see that footage. But that's the only difference with like, there's no like TV cut of this or like extended cut. Same with part 4 and part 3. Like they didn't have different cuts to them like 1 and 2 did. But this one just had some extra scenes that are finally seeing the light of day. So yeah, Halloween 5. And Halloween 5 has the weakest thing with like the Man in Black, like this random guy who you know nothing about, and Michael suddenly got a thorn tattoo on his arm. And then the Man in Black shoots up the police station at the end and kills like 30 policemen, and then Jamie goes in and Michael's gone and she's like, no! And then it ends, and it's like, it feels anticlimactic because the Man in Black you know nothing about. And part 6 tells you who the Man in Black is, but it's like, it's still in part 5, it's like really weak. So part 5 is definitely one of the weakest. I do like a lot of things about it, but it just feels so rushed and kind of really stupid in a way where I didn't enjoy it. But hold on, we're gonna see more stupid stuff throughout the franchise. But next up is Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers, Halloween 6. The first Dimension films, Halloween, because the first two, the first one was independently made. 2 and 3 were Universal. 3 and 4 were independently made by Mustafa Akkad, the godfather of the franchise. And then Halloween 6. 6 years after Halloween 5, this is a sequel to Part 5 where Jamie appears, then she gets killed, and then it's about Paul Rudd as Tommy Doyle and Kara Strode, who's the family of Laurie's fake dad's family. Like, it's very weird. This one is directed by Joe Chappelle, which I know has directed other stuff. I don't know what he has directed, but I know he's directed more than this. And the plot of that is basic. Like I said, Michael is his secrets are revealed. He is part of a cult that tells that Michael is part of a cult that every other kid in every generation kills off all their family members or has to because of this curse. And it's pretty dumb. but that's the plot. And Dr. Loomis comes back and is really old, and this is right before he died. And then Tommy Doyle and Kara Strode try to stop Michael Myers and escape from Michael Myers and escape the cult. That's pretty much the movie. It's hard to describe. The poster art is cool. It's simple, but I like it. It works. The cast is definitely a weak cast. I like Dr. Loomis like usual. J.C. Brandy plays Jamie Lloyd because Danielle Harris, they didn't want to give her any money for this one, and she did 4 and 5, and it's so disrespectful that they're like, you're worthless kind of thing is basically what I'm getting from it, that they're like, we don't care about you because you're killed in the first act. And I think there is an interview on the Scream Factory release of this where Danielle Harris does talk about that. They basically just said she was worthless, and they're like, we don't want to give you any money. You're going to get killed off in the first act. And I was just thinking in my head the same thing she thought. It's like, well, am I really not that important? I just made 2 movies about my character, and then you're going to kill me off and then make this character have Michael Myers' baby, so it's incest. It's just like, what? So it would have been cool to have Danielle Harris back, but it's just unfortunate that she got the shit into the deal. Like, because it just felt like most of these movies producers are like, who gives a shit about the last movie kind of thing. H2O is a good example of that, where they ignore 4, 5, and 6. They're like, who cares? We're going to not give an explanation. We're just going to say they don't exist. Kind of like that. So it's a lot of producers do that in these movies. But Halloween 6, J.C. Brandy plays Danielle Harris. And J.C. Brandy, I have heard that name before. I know she's been in other stuff, but I can't think of anything on top of my head like Joe Chappelle. But she's honestly fine because she's not in the movie that much as Jamie. She looks like an older, in a way, kind of an older Danielle Harris. Even though, again, it should have just been Danielle Harris if it weren't for the producers. But, whatever. And I like that this one has, I think, a good opening. I like the fact that the opening has great atmosphere in it, and I think that the movie has great atmosphere. I think it is one of the most fall-looking of the movies, atmospheric-wise, with a great Michael Myers performance. George C. Wilbur comes back, and he is brutal as hell. He is one of the most brutal Michael Myers, besides like Tyler Mayne or like James Hugh Courtney in the new one. So it's great seeing that. The atmosphere is awesome. The gore is really gory in this movie. It's not a movie, like, it's weird because 4 and 5 had gore, but then a lot of the time they would kind of like be artistic and like be like John Carpenter and not show as much gore. In this one, they show a lot of gore. They show a lot of crazy shit in this, and it's fine. But this movie suffered through so many different things. So, despite all this, Donald Pleasance was in the movie as Dr. Loomis. It was his last film role, his last Halloween role, and then he died at the age of 75, and he didn't even live to see the final product. So he had died before the movie was finished because, of course, they put this movie and gave it to screeners for 14-year-old kids who didn't understand the movie and were like, this movie sucks. So they added in a lot of random shit. And this movie is just, it has a million different cuts in it. It feels so butchered, especially the theatrical cut where it's got a lot of quick edits, very 90s, like quick zoom cuts, quick edits, quick sound effects that are really silly. And it's just, it's very weird. It's a very weird movie. Again, the idea of Michael Myers being part of a cult, that he's in the line of the family member that kills off all the other family members because they have to, because it's a curse. Like, that's just, it's not the worst idea in the world, but it's like, it was so silly. So that's weird. The cult is a very weird thing in this movie. The Man in Black from Part 5 is Dr. Wynn, the guy who had one scene in the original Halloween, who Dr. Loomis said, Michael doesn't know how to drive. Somebody must have gave him lessons. And then it lingers on Dr. Wynn before he walked inside. And it was like, so does that mean that Dr. Wynn was the person? And he was, apparently, in this continuity, that he was the one who was part of the cult. He was the leader, and he's the one who let Michael Myers drive, I guess. What? Like, that's ridiculous. Also, like Part 5, where Rachel gets killed off quick, Jamie gets killed off quick. Whether it's the theatrical cut or the producer's cut, Jamie still dies. Jamie never makes it past the second act in this movie, and it's such a shame because they really, really shit on this character that was so important in 4 and 5, and then they bring in Tommy Doyle as a character, Kara Strode as a character, and Dr. Loomis. But it's like, did you not see 4 and 5, like how important this character was, and then you're just going to immediately kill her off? Like, that was so lame to do that. I don't understand that. And also, the movie has a producer's cut, which is on this release as well, because again, it's the box set. And the producer's cut, I won't explain all the differences like I did with the other movies I've talked about so far, but this one has a weird ending in the producer's cut that's way stupider. Well, I take that back. Both endings are stupid, because in the theatrical cut, Michael Myers gets bashed in the head by Paul Rudd with a bat, and then like Michael Myers has like green blood, and it's like, what? And then in the producer's cut, Michael Myers, they put rocks down in a circle, and Michael Myers stands in the middle, and he can't move because of the curse. And it's like, that is ridiculous. Like, it doesn't make any sense, and they don't make sense either way. But the producer's cut feels more like the first movie, with like the editing and with the sound effects and with making it feel more classy. And the theatrical cut, after probably they went to screen these to 14-year-old kids, they made the movie really gory. They made the movie have a lot of quick jump cuts, quick cuts of stuff, and it just was really stupid. Even though I like the opening of the movie where it just says, like, you hear Jamie say, Uncle Michael, please don't hurt me, and then it just shows her scream, or you hear her screaming, and then it just shows like scenes throughout the movie, and like quick cuts, and then it shows the title card. I thought that was cool, but besides that, the editing is really silly. It has some of the most forgettable characters in the franchise. Paul Rudd is so strange in this movie because I love Paul Rudd. He's not bad, but he's just like very different than I've ever seen him in any movie before. And he was making Clueless at the same time. Like, it's weird to see him such a drastic difference, because he feels like normal Paul Rudd in Clueless. In this, he feels like, I don't know what his deal is, like, kind of performance-wise. Even though I love Paul Rudd, he's awesome. But yeah, and there's an interesting concept with the cult. Like, I do like how that Danny kid, Kara's kid, is like the next one in line to become the next Michael Myers. I do like that, but it's just not executed super well. Like, I did enjoy that. And it had an ending cliffhanger no matter which ending you watch, because of the ending of the producer's cut, Loomis becomes the new Dr. Wynn with the thorn symbol. Or in the theatrical cut, you just see Michael's mask on the ground and Loomis is screaming, and then it ends. And it's just like, that is so abrupt and stupid. Either way. But Halloween 6 was going to originally be a set of more movies, like, but they were going to go direct to video, and it was going to be like Tommy would be the new Dr. Loomis. But then they said, fuck that, and then let's just bring Jamie Lee Curtis back for Halloween H2O. 1998, 20th anniversary. Jamie Lee Curtis said, John Carpenter, Deborah Hill, I know we've been in show business for 20 years. Let's go back and see what these characters do. And then, of course, John Carpenter and Deborah Hill did not get involved. They left the project. Jamie Lee Curtis came in, stayed in, almost left because they wouldn't kill off Michael Myers. So she had to have a, she had to go talk to the producers and then say, like, this is, like, they both had to agree to have her in the movie, but to have Michael Myers not die. But this one is directed by Steve Miner, who directed Friday the 13th 2 and 3, which I love, and then House, Forever Young. He's directed more stuff, but Steve Miner's the director, and the plot is 20 years later, Laurie Strode is in California, and she's got a son this time, Josh Hartnett, and Michael Myers comes back for her, and she's lived in fear for 20 years, and she goes and fights him off and cuts his head off at the end of the movie. That is the plot of Halloween H2O. The poster is pretty silly because it's just all these actors. It's not like the other artworks like this where it's like it's just a lot of hot faces on it. And they did that with Scream, Urban Legend. I know he did last summer, all of these movies. So this came out during Scream, or not during Scream, after Scream, a couple years after the first Scream. Poster's really whatever. Like, I don't mind it, but I don't love it. The cast, Jamie Lee Curtis back, awesome. Love that she came back. Love that she brought a lot to this movie, honestly. Like, if she wasn't in this movie would have been way less of a movie for me. The atmosphere, there is none. This movie feels not like a Halloween movie. It feels like nothing. It feels like a Scream movie. And I love Scream, the first two, but this movie is a Halloween movie. It shouldn't be looking like Scream. Like, it doesn't have any atmosphere to it, especially after part 6, which, problems with part 6 aside, that had some great atmosphere to it. It looked beautiful. And also Chris Duran as Michael Myers, who seems like a great guy. He played it as less of a brute. Like, he wasn't like George P. Wilbur in the last movie. He really was just a normal looking skinny dude. And it's not to say that his performance was bad. It wasn't. It just, he felt, especially compared to the last one, he didn't feel like a brutal Michael Myers. He felt like a normal person. And I think that that's what they were trying to go for, because this one ignored 4, 5, and 6. And Michael was more normal than like a butch big Michael like he was in part 6. But yeah, Chris Duran, I really think he's one of my lesser favorite Michaels overall. Like, I don't dislike him, but he just really doesn't, and I don't think it's his fault. I just feel like he really doesn't bring much to the movie as Michael Myers. But I think their intent was trying to be like that, but it just came off as it didn't give him much to do, kind of thing. He had some okay moments as Michael with his mannerisms and everything and stuff like that, but it didn't really completely work. The biggest sin of this movie is ignoring Halloween 4, 5, and 6. Like, it would have been a stronger story if Laurie Strode took her son, divorced with whoever she divorced with, and the daughter was left in Haddonfield, and Michael Myers killed her, and then Laurie Strode hates Michael Myers even more because he killed off her daughter. That would have been a powerful way to continue on with 4, 5, and 6. You don't have to keep the cult. Just say, like, Michael Myers is still alive. You didn't have to say he's been dead for 20 years or missing for 20 years since Halloween 2. You could have just said that. And I have theories, like, if they put Halloween 4, 5, and 6 into this continuity, I feel like the cult could have just covered up that Michael Myers killed everybody and, like, it was Dr. Wynn, and, like, people would be like, oh, so Michael Myers didn't kill anybody, so he's been missing for 20 years. That could have been an easy line. It would have been way more powerful if Laurie Strode's daughter was in the picture and had been killed, and Laurie is taking even more revenge because her daughter was killed. That would have been way better. But it's, and I'm going to shit on Steve Miner for a minute, because I love this director. Like, he's awesome. I love his movies, but listening to the commentary for H2O, like, he just lashed out saying, like, 4, 5, and 6 were bad when he didn't see 4, 5, and 6. He didn't see any Halloween movies that were sequels. He also said that part 2 didn't even, he acted like part 2 wasn't even part of the picture in this movie, even though it clearly is. He said he wanted to make the movie just after the first one and none of the others existed, which to me just thought, wow, you're not going to even try. Like, you're just going to make a new movie and ignore all the other ones and not try to connect them. Like, I feel like that's just kind of lazy. And unfortunate, because like I said, it would have made a powerful movie if like her daughter was in the picture and she died, and like Laurie's even more pissed at Michael Myers. That would have been great. But yeah, 4, 5, and 6, ignoring it is stupid, and it also creates the whole plethora of all these sequels that ignore other sequels. So yeah, the problem with this movie is the continuity for me. And also, it's too short and it's not scary. The atmosphere is not here. It's not creepy at all. But I'll say there's some of the absolute positives in this movie that I love out of any of the franchises, of the whole franchise. Jamie Lee Curtis's performance in this movie is my favorite performance out of all of the Halloween movies. It's so weird because Halloween 2018, I really liked her performance, but I love this one more because in 2018, it felt less believable. In this one, she's related to Michael Myers. In this one, Halloween 1 and 2 are in the picture, so she has seen all these people die, has lived with guilt for 20 years, or fear for 20 years. And I feel like her performance just really, really sold, more so than 2018, even though I did like her performance in 2018. But this one, the quiet moments with her, like just the idea that she has suffered, worked way better in this one. In the new one, it feels slightly unrealistic because it's like 40 years later, she had one encounter with Michael Myers, and in this one, she had 2 encounters and she's related to him. And I feel like that makes more logical sense to me personally. But yeah, I feel like it's really silly, like with like comparatively so to this in 2018, because 2018 and this one are very similar. The movie, another positive, the movie is like part 1, where it's not really that violent at all. It's one of the least violent of all the franchise, which I thought was fine. The idea and concept of Laurie Strode living in fear for 20 years on the run, and then killing off Michael Myers is such a great story. And I love her performance in this. I love the idea that this story is centered around that. And then in the end of the movie, she cuts his head off, and it feels rewarding. It feels like the end of the series, and it would have been perfect if it ended the series there for the original movies, where she cuts his head off. It's fantastic. The best acting scenes, like there is some scenes where I'm just enthralled by her performance, where she sees her son John like getting a drink or at the liquor store, and they're like out of school when it's school hours. She screams at him like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And she just says like, "What do you think you can wander around town on this day of all days?" And then she says like, "Why don't you give me one day?" And then John says, "I give you every day. Like, Michael Myers is dead. Like, get over it." And I really like that scene, like between her and her son. And I love the scene between her and Will, who's the boyfriend of the movie that she has. And she tells him her backstory. And it's just really, really well done, where she says like, "I had a brother, he killed his sister, he went to an institution, then he came out and waited 15 years for me." And I just thought it was a really moving scene, and Jamie Lee Curtis's performance in that scene was just so moving and just so great. And I really think that it's more simplistic in this one than 2018, and it works way better performance-wise, even though Jamie Lee Curtis said that this one was like a paycheck movie. But I don't understand that, because Resurrection was easily the paycheck movie for her, because she was killed in the first 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then was gone from the movie. But whatever. The scene in the dumbwaiter is good, with Sarah and Charlie getting his throat slit, and like she finds him and she gets in there because Michael Myers is chasing her. That one's good, and she gets her leg amputated, or not amputated, like damaged. The scene where John and Molly, young Michelle Williams role, John and Molly are running around, and they're in the gate, and Michael Myers is trying to get them through the gate, and then they get through the gate. Laurie sees Michael Myers through the window, and their look at each other right next to each other through the door is one of my favorite scenes in any of the franchise. Like, I love it. The shot of Laurie with the axe at the end going, "Michael!" And then the fight of her fighting off Michael. stabbing him, hitting him with an axe. All of that stuff is really, really, really great. Even though it's short, the ending, um, the whole last act I like, even though it's short. I think it's great. Them flying off the hill, her holding hands out to Michael, cutting his head off because she's like, "I'm done with this fear. I'm done. Cut him off." Um, I liked LL Cool J. Like, I thought he was funny, but there's repercussions to having LL Cool J in this, because then they thought, oh, we're gonna do another rapper in the next movie, but it's gonna be more of the rapper, and he's gonna ad lib more. So Buster Rhymes ad libs more in Halloween Resurrection. LL Cool J, I think, is good in this, but he slightly feels out of place just because of the comedic stuff he says, like when he's talking about the sex book to his wife on the phone. Like, I thought that was funny, but it just felt like out of place, like a Halloween movie. It felt in that time, modern 1998, where like it was just silly jokes of that time. Um, but he was fine. I liked him in it. Also, like I said, this movie, Michael Myers has got his head chopped off, but of course, Jamie Lee Curtis knew, because she tried and tried to kill off Michael Myers for good. But then they said, no, we can't legally kill off Michael Myers. We got to make more movies. So she made a deal with them where, like, she'd be in the movie. She made it. They would give the explanation in Resurrection, which they did. But H2O, I really love a lot of things about it. It's a very mixed bag, but I love it as a movie. Like, I just love it as an entertaining movie, but it's not scary. It's not atmospheric. Great Jamie Lee Curtis performance. Great last act. Great story of this character getting over the fear and killing Michael Myers for good. Or, you know what I mean? Not really, because of course we have this boy right here, Halloween Resurrection, starring Busta Rhymes and Tyra Banks, and Jamie Lee Curtis for the first 10 minutes, 15 minutes. This is directed by Rick Rosenthal, who directed Halloween 2, and the poster art is like H2O, where it's Michael with a lot of hot faces on it. The score I actually like way more than H2O, or not way more. The score I like more than H2O in ways, because it's creepier. H2O is not really a creepy score. This one is a creepier score, so I'll give it that above H2O. The atmosphere is way better in this than H2O, honestly. It looks good. It looks scary. The Michael Myers is good. Brad Lorry, and his performance is good. I think Michael Myers I like more than this than Part 7, honestly. And Halloween Resurrection is literally... it's just so weird when they make sequels like this. Like, Halloween 5 was an example of this, where Rachel gets killed off in the first 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and Jamie is not the killer. In this one, Michael Myers did not get killed. He apparently switched suits with the paramedic, crushed the paramedic's throat larynx, so the paramedic couldn't speak, put the Michael Myers mask on him, so Laurie Strode killed off an innocent man with 3 kids, and then she went to a mental institution, and then Michael Myers comes and kills her off in the first 15 minutes. And it's so insulting, especially compared to the fact that that story in H2O of getting over that fear, of standing up to the evil, just to say, fuck you, he's alive, whatever. Whatever, Jamie Lee Curtis, you can't save the day. We're gonna just kill you off. But I mean, I know she wanted to get killed off because she didn't want to keep going, which is honestly like a smart decision in that time period. Whenever she made H2O and Resurrection, it's like, how do I keep going with this? Like, it makes sense. I like how this movie is so hated, but I don't dislike watching it. I actually don't mind it. But there are negatives. Of course, killing Laurie off. The idea of the movie is stupid. Busta Rhymes, while I think he is having a fun time, he just really feels out of place in terms of, let's get this big star who's a rapper and put him in a movie. And it just seems silly. Like, and sometimes it works. Like, I didn't mind Paris Hilton in, like, House of Wax remake. But in this one, it's like Busta Rhymes is just kind of so obviously like a singer. It didn't do that in House of Wax, or like Paris Hilton, they didn't say she was a singer. In this one, he didn't say he was a singer either, but he just feels like he's so out of place for me. Um, and it's just a stupid movie. Like, it insults Michael Myers a lot. Like, there's a scene where Freddy, who's Busta Rhymes' character, wears Michael Myers' mask, punches Michael, hits Michael, then he karate chops Michael later in the movie. He says "fuck you" to Michael. He says stupid stuff to Michael. The characters in this are forgettable, but I remember them a little bit more than I thought I would. Laurie, of course, gets killed off. Busta Rhymes, I of course remember Freddy. I remember Tyra Banks, Nora. I remember Sarah, who Bianca Kylie plays, and I liked her. Jen, who is annoying, but she's played by Katie Sackhoff, who's awesome. And Katie Sackhoff said already that this is like her first movie, so like she didn't know what to do, which is fine. But her character just comes off as annoying. Um, and then you've got like Deckard, who Ryan Merriman plays, the guy who was in all these Disney Channel movies like Luck of the Irish and stuff from the 2000s. And he's a nerd who's got a phone that like will talk to Sarah, like they talk to each other via phone from 2002. And he's the one that watches the Dangertainment show where they're all doing the inside the Myers house, like with cameras. So those characters, like, I think that they're okay. Like, honestly, like, just the idea of Busta Rhymes and Tyra Banks being in this movie, like, makes them more memorable than if it would have been a main character. Like, the Sarah character, I didn't mind. But also, I do like that this movie is whenever you have this movie where the last couple movies, or last lot of movies, were about the family angle. Laurie Strode is killed in this one, then it's about a random set of people again, like the first movie, which I genuinely was surprised remembering that rewatching, because I'm like, wow, they didn't focus on a family member this time. So I like that. There's such weird scenes in this movie. There's one scene that makes me laugh where I'm just like, what the fuck? Where like Sarah and Jen are in their college dorm, and this random kid walks up and says, "Don't go to that house. He killed people there." And then like for some reason, the girls have their panties on a holder right next to the door, and he starts holding their panties, and then he goes, "Ma, ma," and then he walks away, and I'm just like, what? Like, it was so funny because it was so weird, but it was like very, very odd. And of course, you've got to, no matter if you love or hate this line, most people hate it, you've got to appreciate the fact that Busta Rhymes said, "Trick or treat, motherfucker," like to Michael Myers. Like, that is great. Busta Rhymes says a lot of stuff in this movie that doesn't make sense. At the end of the movie, whenever he's talking to the press, and he's like, "Michael Myers is not a sound bite." And I'm just like, what? Like, and then he says he's a killer shark with baggy ass overalls. And I guess that's accurate. He is like a shark. Like, he is a dangerous killer. But, like, it's just so weird. But yeah, Resurrection is just, it's bad, but it's memorable. Like, I rewatch it and I think, I don't hate this one. I think it's a bad movie, but, like, whether it's bad or not, I remember it very well. I always remember the movie and how interesting it is. I do like how bad it is. Like, I can watch it like as much as the other ones. Like, and I'm totally fine with that. Especially, it eases the blow because you've got the new Jamie Lee Curtis one. So even though she gets killed in the beginning, it's like whatever, because you got more coming that with her in it. So yeah, let's dump the Halloween films and talk about the next one Rob Zombie did. So Rob Zombie made 2 Halloween movies after they decided Resurrection was so bad. They're like, we're just going to reboot it. Rob Zombie's Halloween, which, and is also signed. I got this signed by Tyler Mayne and Scout Taylor Compton. I got to see them at a con this year. They were really sweet. So I've met Tyler Mayne, Danielle Harris, and Scout Taylor Compton. I need to meet Christina Klebb. She was going to be at this convention I went to, but then she had to quit at the last minute, unfortunately. So I haven't met her yet, but that'd be cool to have her sign this. But Halloween 2007 is a very interesting remake. It made a shit ton of money. It is directed by Rob Zombie, he's weird. I enjoy his movies, but some of his movies I don't like that much, but I enjoy a majority of them. Rob Zombie, honestly, on paper, feels like a good director for this movie. Like, um, it is a very ambitious movie, yet not ambitious, if that makes sense. Like, it it is very on the nose with everything. Like it, so the first half is young Michael Myers, where it takes away the mystery of the first one, and like young Michael Myers is a shitty kid who kills a lot of people, and he's like a just a killer. He's a psycho, and he's like 10. And then the second half is Michael Myers as an adult, and it's like the first Halloween movie, but more brutal. But the first half of the movie is the part I liked less because it's so on the nose. Like I don't this kind of annoys me with movies where like I understand unlikable characters, but like watching young Michael Myers and his family with Sherry Moon Zombie and William Forsythe, where they are just saying the grossest things to each other, grossest obscenity, sexual stuff. Um, it to me was too much. If they just said a couple lines, it would have been like fine, but it just felt so cartoonishly like silly, like whenever they were saying all this stuff to each other. Um, and I've never had a family like that. I've never had a family that would say at the family table like that a guy would like come on somebody's tits. Like that's what he says, and that's what William Forsythe says in the movie. And it's just like, oh my god, like, and then like Sherry Moon Zombie says, I hope he likes cripples. Like it's a little cartoonish. With the dialogue where I'm just like, it is a little too much. Or not a little too much, it is too much for me. But like I said, I'm not a prude. It's just if they said a couple lines and not just did like, I could see when it's a couple lines of dialogue that establishes that these people are gross and weird. But like whenever that's all they say, it just felt like it was too much for me, like too on the nose. Um, but I felt like the first act or the first half, I still appreciate all of it in being different. Like I do appreciate that Rob Zombie really did make the first half his own movie, and the second half is basically the first movie again, but more violent, which is fine. It works, but the first half is definitely the weaker part for me. Um, the casting in this is spectacular. All three girls are great. Scout Taylor Compton as Laurie Strode is great. She's even greater in the second one. Danielle Harris as Annie comes back from the other films, or since she was in 4 and 5. Christina Klebb as Linda is great. She's a really bitchy character, but she's great. And Scout Taylor Compton plays a good, like, more modern Laurie and more shy. And then Danielle Harris is like the middle, like, where she's kind of more the horny one. I mean, I guess Christina Klebb is too, but, or her character is too. But the personalities are that in this movie. And I like the three girls. I thought that they were good. Like, I thought that they were good replacements for, like, in this modern film. Like, I thought that worked. And then Malcolm McDowell as sheriff, as a, not sheriff, as Dr. Loomis. That's really awesome. That's surprising. Like, because I like Malcolm McDowell a lot, and I thought did a good job in the role. He really worked. Brad Dourif as Sheriff Brackett is awesome, and especially in part 2 as well. He's fantastic in part 2. Um, William Forsythe as the shitty ass stepdad, like, or dad. I don't even know, stepdad, dad in the beginning. Sherry Moon Zombie as Michael's mom shows a lot of sympathy, and I actually liked her a lot, and she's really effective in the movie. Like, this might be my favorite Sherry Moon Zombie role. Um, Tyler Mayne as Michael Myers is just brutal. He's one of the most brutal Michael Myers in both of these films. The Spy Kids kid is in here, who played Junie in Spy Kids, who's the bully, and it's so weird to see him be that bully in this. Danny Trejo's in this as well. Dee Wallace and Clint Howard and Ken Foray and Sid Haig, like, they have a giant crew in this movie, or giant cast. A lot of alumni from his other couple movies before this, like House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects. But Rob Zombie had a great cast, and like I said, I feel like the weakest part for me is just the first half, where like it has some good moments in it of brutality and like ideas, but like it just wasn't executed where I loved it or liked it that much, but the second half I liked a lot more. And I liked whenever he made it his own, especially the ending act was great. The ending act where it continues on from the first movie where Michael Myers is outside, he takes Laurie. Laurie and then him go back into the house. Loomis is dead, presumed dead. Laurie, being the shy girl, becomes this monster where like or not monster, this like brutal force where like Michael Myers is coming at her. She gets a pistol out. She's about to fall over. She's just like got blood on her face, like about, and then Michael throws her out of the building with her, and then they both land on the ground injured, and Laurie just shoots Michael in the head and screams. And that scream that she did is one of the most memorable screams in horror. Like, it just shows her screaming and just covered in blood, and it ends that way. And then it shows a shot of her as a baby with young Michael Myers, Dig. That's really good way to end it. Like, I really love that ending. And like I said, the movie is so weird because I appreciate it in a lot of ways, but it just felt in some ways a little too cartoonish for me, like in terms of like how they executed the backstory. But I liked the second act more, even though it's just the first movie again, but way more brutal. And I think that works. I think that's awesome. But no matter what I think about it, I still think it's a good movie. I still think it works. I have some issues with it, but I really like ideas from this one, so I think it's good. There's a theatrical and extended edition. I'm used to the theatrical or the extended edition. I have not. I've seen the theatrical version like a long time ago, but maybe once or twice. This one I've watched so many times, the director's cut or extended cut, whatever you call it. So I can't tell the differences. Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. This one is very, very like Halloween 5 and 6, very, very mixed feelings towards it, whether it's critics or fans. Critics trashed this movie, hated it. And I really think Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 has a lot of good things about it. This one, like Halloween 2, the original Halloween 2 had a lot of studio problems. Rob Zombie did not want to come back to do this, but then he came back to do it. Then the studio kept telling him, do this, do this, do this. So then he just had a lot of trouble. So this movie was really butchered. There's a theatrical and extended cut as well. Difference with those. I don't know the differences really. Like I said, I've grown watching this extended director's cut, but the theatrical cut I have seen, but that's whenever it came out in 2009. So it's been a long time since I've watched the theatrical cut. But best thing I can say about this movie, best performance, Scout Taylor Compton. Awesome. Really fantastic. I love how she's trashed and just destroyed as a human being and is becoming Michael Myers. I love how Dr. Loomis is this shitbag. Like, he has gained all this money on these horrible murders and from his own patient, and then becomes famous, gets all these hotel rooms, gets all these interviews, like gets all this money, and it's great to see how horrible of a person he becomes after the first one, and I love that as well. I love how Annie Brackett, that was the party girl in the first movie, and now in this one, she is just the mother of her and Laurie and Chief Brackett. Chief Brackett feels guilty because he's the one who knows the backstory with Laurie, and then Laurie figures out the backstory, and it's even more sad and depressing for Laurie. So he feels guilty, so he keeps her at the house. I love that. I like the side characters, all right, like Maya and Harley, like they're okay. Octavia Spencer's in this. She's the one who gets stabbed in the head like a million times, but great brutal scene. It's terrifying to watch. Caroline Williams is in this as well. Both of them are in the opening 15 minutes that are like the original Halloween 2. Bray Grant is, I forgot if it's Maya or Harley. It's one of the two. I think it's Maya. But Bray Grant has been in a lot of recent horror, which, if you haven't seen The Perfectionist, or not The Perfectionist, The Stylist is a good horror movie. She was in that recently, and she was in Lucky. So she's been in some horror movies recently, which I've really enjoyed. So it's funny to see her in this, like, just because she looks so different than she does now. She's got like short blonde hair, like really short spiky pixie hair. This movie has got some incredibly stupid moments. The scene where Richard Brake is taking Michael Myers' body with another guy, they hit a cow, then he's bleeding all over, then he just says fuck, 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 fuck. He just says like fuck like 20 times to the camera, and he's bleeding blood out of his mouth, and you're just like, did you really shoot this scene and put this in the movie? Like, that is pointless. Um, the scene with the rabbit in red, the strip club, is pointless. It's just there to add more body count and show a girl fully naked and get slammed into the wall. But some of the dialogue is funny there. Like, the guy who's the owner says, like, how would you like to get fucked by the Frankenstein monster? Like, that was kind of funny. But it is pointless, that scene. Like, it literally adds almost nothing to it. The white horse thing is weird. I don't know if Rob really made that up or if the studio made that up. He said he did in the audio commentary, but I don't know. The white horse thing is so weird. Like, Michael sees a white horse, Laurie sees a white horse. That's how they're connected. Brutal. It's just a brutal as hell movie, and I did like the brutality of it. It is a good slasher, but it has some stupid stuff too. It's got a lot of slow cuts as well. Like, there's a lot of slow moments where I'm like, why did you slow the movie down? Like, it's so obvious and it's kind of annoying. And I like how it opened like after the original Rob Zombie first one. Like, it's like the original Halloween and Halloween 2, like they connect, and I like that. I thought that was cool. I like how there's a scene where the repercussions of Linda being killed, like where Dr. Loomis is doing like a book signing and then Laurie's dad comes in, gets a gun, and says like, you killed her. I like that scene because it's tragic that you didn't know who this person was, and he's like, this is my daughter, your monster killed her. Like, I thought that was effective for the character, for Loomis to go through that, even though he's still a shitbag throughout the movie. I like how there's an idea in this movie that I just think it's weird. I don't know why. I just think this is what Rob Zombie really wanted. I think he wanted Laurie to be the killer in this, because almost every time Michael Myers kills somebody, it's where nobody's around, or it's where Laurie is imagining it at the same time, because Laurie and Michael have a connection. And she killed him in the last movie. She grazed him, which I still don't understand. Like, they say he died for good, and then they're like, no, she just grazed him. I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense. But I think she was the killer in this. I think that's what they wanted, because every time Michael Myers kills, it's either when she's around, it's either when she sees it as a vision, and nobody else is around her. So I just think that that's very odd. Like, it just feels like it's placed perfectly to where you can interpret that. And that's a cool difference. And I liked that a lot. And this year, whenever I went to that convention to meet Scout and Scout Taylor Compton and Tyler Mayne, like I watched a panel of theirs, and they were saying like, yeah, a lot of stuff in part 2 didn't make any sense because the studio was like, we're gonna do this, and Rob Zombie's like, well, I thought this was my movie, kind of thing, and it was his movie, and it's really weird whenever studios interrupt and do that. Like the original Halloween 2, like it's Rick Rosenthal's movie, but it's also John Carpenter's movie, because like they both basically directed it together. Like, it's like weird. And I love the scene. Brad Dourif gives a fantastic scene in this movie where after Annie is killed for good, because she died in the first movie and then came back, of course, Daniel Harris. And then whenever she dies in this, Brad Dourif's scene of him crying over his dead daughter is genuinely sad. And it's just so surprising in a horror movie getting that emotion. It's like an H2O. Whenever you watch Jamie Lee Curtis's performance, I was like, wow, seriously? Like, this is fantastic. But that's pretty much all I could say about Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. I love the performance of Scout Taylor Compton. I like the repercussions of everything that happened in the first movie. It's a good slasher. It just got a lot of stupid shit in it. So, on to the last one. Halloween 2018. And I got this signed by James Jude Courtney a couple years ago. The year Halloween came out, I went to a convention and he was there. Nice guy. Really cool. I love this artwork. This is the steelbook as well for 2018. Halloween 2018, the third sequel, reboot, whatever. This one connects only to the first film, directed by David Gordon Green. The plot is Michael Myers escapes 40 years later. Jamie Lee Curtis tries to hunt him down, or Laurie Strode tries to hunt him down while she has her daughter Karen and her granddaughter Allison. Score is the best score after the first movie. Well, I'd say I love part 2 as well, but this score is incredible. John Carpenter and his son Cody Carpenter came back, did the score, fantastic. The cast is really good. Like I said, I like Jamie Lee Curtis's performance more in H2O, but I still really like her in this movie. Um, I like a lot the daughter and the granddaughter, Judy Greer's Karen. I thought she did a good job. I thought she had some great moments. I thought Allison I liked a lot. I liked Allison and Laurie's scenes together. Um, the atmosphere in this feels like a John Carpenter movie. Really good. I really liked how it felt. Michael Myers is brutal as hell. James Hugh Courtney did a great job. Really, really scary. Really one of the best performances overall of Michael Myers. I'm not a big fan of the movie starting out with these podcasters. Like, it just felt like a weird way to start the movie. I was like, what? That's strange. The no sibling angle, I wish that they would have kind of kept that, because you've got a lot of ways to shoehorn in, like, how do we get Laurie Strode to Michael Myers, and how do we get them connected to fight at the end? Like, since they're not brother and sister, it's like a weird, like, we got to get a crazy doctor and he's got to go crazy, and then that's how it's going to get Laurie and Michael to fight at the end. It's not because they're connected. And I just thought that was weird. Like, I wish the sibling angle was kind of still connected, because it didn't have to not be. And I know John Carpenter hated that he wrote that in the second movie, but I mean, in H2O, it made more logical sense while Michael Myers was still chasing after her 20 years later. Like, this one, 40 years later, he's only chasing after her because Dr. Sartain made it that way. He made her lead to Laurie. Like, it didn't feel the same. And Laurie is Sarah Connor in this, which I thought was good. I did like her as Sarah Connor. She was badass, and I thought she was fun. I like how Laurie says Michael is a person, not an entity. But in the first movie, he was basically an entity. And this is a sequel to just the first one. Michael Myers would appear and disappear in places like a shape, like not a human being. But she purposely say he's not a human being in this, which is weird. Laurie is divorced twice in this continuity. The state took her daughter away at 12, which I thought was a good plot. Like, I like that story about how she loses her daughter because she went so crazy. Even though it's less believable that it was just one night as opposed to the other sequels. I like the idea of tortured Laurie, but like I said, it feels like it's less important with the connection. But still, I mean, this Laurie, I guess in particular, just lost it after dealing with Michael Myers one night. Like, even one night dealing with a killer, like, it would be traumatizing. But I feel like it's more believable if, like, part 2 existed, or even H2O, like, kind of thing, where, like, all these horrible times she's dealt with it, as opposed to one time she dealt with it in this version. Like I said, I like Karen and Allison. I like the scene a lot where Laurie talks to she talks to Allison about her mom, like, at the football field. And I love how Allison says, like, this thing cost you your family, like, being scared and, like, being worried. And I love how Laurie just says, like, if I did all this and my daughter hates me, like, I'd rather have that to have her be able to survive in this world than not. And I thought that was a really good scene. And I love how Allison just says, just get rid of Michael. It's over. Like, get rid of him. And it's basically like Josh Hartnett said, and John said in Halloween H2O, like, he's dead. Like, he's dead. Like, it's that kind of scene. But I like that scene a lot. And I liked how it was just banter between, like, Laurie and Allison, where she gives her the $3,000, Allison, and Allison's like, I can't take this. And she's like, do whatever your heart wants with it. And then Allison says, maybe I'll go to college. And then Laurie says, fuck college. Just go to Mexico. And then, like lines like that I thought were fun. And it made these characters more relatable. And I did like that. There are a lot of characters in this movie. They're definitely some of the way more memorable characters, especially in the past couple Halloween movies. I liked her friends. I thought they were funny. Allison's friends, even though, of course, they get killed like you would expect. Sartain was the new doctor who had the twist that people don't like, where, like, he's crazy instead of a good doctor. And it just felt like it was out of left field just to purposefully drive Michael Myers to Laurie Strode, because they don't have the brother and sister connection anymore, which is silly. You get a PJ Souls cameo as in the school with Allison talking, or with Allison in class. The use of gore and no gore is good. Like, I like how you see some brutal scenes, but then don't see some. So it's a mix of, we want the gore, but we want to have a movie like the original. So I did like that. I liked how there were scenes of Laurie doing Michael things where Allison looks out the window at the school and then Laurie's standing there like Michael did in the first movie. Or whenever Laurie flies out the window at the end and then when Michael looks, she disappears. Or whenever she appears in the closet like Michael did. Or not in the closet. Yeah, but it was in the closet, but it was in the dark like Michael appeared in the dark in the first one. I liked that a lot. And that was such a cool establishment of like, Laurie is like being like Michael Myers. She is the hunter to the prey, and I thought that worked really well. I liked the idea of like grandmother, mother, and granddaughter, and like or granddaughter or grandmother, daughter, and granddaughter, and three decades of trauma. Like I thought that was good. I thought that worked, and I liked how relatable and realistic it felt like with Karen, where she's like, "Mom, like it's been 40 years. Like I understand like it's traumatic, but like get on with your life," kind of thing. Like it was good, and I liked these characters and what all three of them established, and I thought all three of them at the end fighting off Michael Myers was awesome, and I love that. There's a lot of jokes in this movie, more than I expect from what I remembered rewatching it. But they're all pretty funny. Like Ray, Karen's husband, says like, "Oh, I got peanut butter on my penis." Like that was a good line. And Julian, who's the little kid who Vicky is babysitting, where he says like, she says on the phone like, "We're gonna get some Alakazam," and then he's like, "I know you're gonna smoke weed. Don't lie to me." And she's like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "I don't lie to me." And she says like, "Well, I'll tell your mom about your browser history." And he's like, "You better not." Like, and then he says like, "Yeah, you're not a good babysitter. Here I am just clipping my nasty ass toenails." Like those lines are really funny, and I feel like they were ad-libbed, but they worked. There's a scene with cops who are like the Halloween 5 cops, but they don't have the dorky music. They just have funny lines about what they've got for lunch. And I thought that was funny before they got killed. Like that was way better than Halloween 5 in terms of that, instead of hearing stupid music. There are references to the sequels throughout the whole movie. Like, of course, the first one, obviously, all the stuff I mentioned already. But part 2, there's, of course, references to Michael Myers. That one track shot of Michael Myers going into the house, killing that girl. It's just like Halloween 2 at the beginning. Michael Myers is in a fire at the end of the movie like he was in Halloween 2. Halloween 3 reference was the masks. Halloween 4 references was the gas station that the podcasters go to and get killed at. But also the gas station was like H2O as well. Halloween 5 was the reference to the cops. Halloween 6, the only reference I got was whenever the guy with the sheriff's hat, I think he was a sheriff, said, "What are we going to do? Cancel Halloween?" And then he laughs. And I'm like, I guess they're making fun of Halloween 6. But in Halloween 5 as well, Tina said like they should ban Halloween in this town. So no matter which continuity you are, they're just going to think about banning Halloween or whatever. But part 6, part H2O is the bathroom scene, and then a lot of similar scenes with Laurie, number of years later, trauma, drinking, divorced. Laurie Strode's character is very similar to H2O, so that's a lot of H2O references. Resurrection, the only reference you get is the Resurrection van. Like there's a van that says Resurrection Church on it or something like that. Rob Zombie, I don't think there's any references. Like, it's brutal like Rob Zombie's movie, so maybe you can count that as a reference. Like, whenever he stomps Sartain's head, it reminded me of whenever he stomped that other guy's head in Halloween 2 with the rabbit in red. The one tracking shot of Michael going around and butchering all these people in the houses was the best scene in the movie. Like, in terms of editing and everything, like, it was fantastic. The last act was great, like I said, with Laurie standing up to Michael, her and her granddaughter and her daughter all fighting Michael, trapping him in the basement, lighting the house on fire, leaving the house, and then they leave, but of course Michael is not there. He's missing, and of course that's because we have the 2 sequels coming out. But it was a great way to end it. I love that. Really like 2018, even though I have some issues with it. So, ranking. I've talked for an hour and 50 minutes almost. Jesus Christ. So, rankings. Number 11 would be Halloween Resurrection. I think it's one of the worst made. It's bad, but I can watch it, but it's definitely one of the worst. Number 10 is Halloween 5, one of the most rushed, one of the most stupid ones, even though it's got some good scary moments in it. Number 9 is Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. It's got some good atmosphere, great Michael Myers, but it's still a stupid movie like Part 5. Number 8 is Rob Zombie's Halloween 1. Effective, but stupid as well. 7 is Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Scout Taylor Compton's performance really is why it's higher up. But it's got some stupid stuff in it, but it's a great slasher. Number 6 is Halloween 4. Halloween 4 has some great effects and moments to it, and I think it's a pretty effective horror movie. Number 5 is Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. Again, just a really cool movie, and again, it's not Michael Myers, but it's effective. It feels like the most like a Halloween movie, but there's some I just put above it. Number 4 is Halloween 2018, which I like a lot. Like I said, a lot of the things that are positive just outweigh the negatives. And Halloween H2O is number 3, which again, I pointed a lot of negatives out, but performance-wise, ending-wise, I feel like that's the best, one of the best, so I put that up really high. Then number 2 is obviously Halloween 2, 1981, which I love, one of my most watched movies ever. And then number 1 is obviously the original. How could I not put the original at number 1? But that's it, guys. We did it. I talked about all these movies, and I spent 2 hours talking about them. Jesus Christ. So yeah, if you watched through to the end, thank you. But that's it. Pretty much all I could say. I'm going a little loopy now just talking about these. But I wanted to talk about them all in one video. So yeah, let's keep going. I've got more 31 Days of Horror coming up. So I got more videos coming up. So I'll see you guys in the next one. And I can't wait for Halloween Kills. Review will be up whenever that comes out as well. So I'll see you guys later. Have a good one.